Hey friends, what's going on? This is David Potts with Song Notes, and today I have the first ever entry into a question and answer series that I want to start on this channel. So my request of you watching this video today is to, in the comments of this video, feel free to ask any questions you have that you would like to see me possibly answer in this series. And every time I record, I'm going to try to answer one. Hopefully over time that will pile up and offer some good stuff. Okay, so with that said, today we're going to answer a question from Renee. So basically we have, thank you for the lesson. Got any tips on how to keep the rhythm going with singing? I can play it just fine, but when I start to sing, my right hand cannot keep the rhythm going, and it does something else completely. It is really frustrating. And Renee, thank you very much for sending that in. The second I read this, I remembered vividly when I was learning Father and Son by Cat Stevens back in 2002 or so. I ran into this exact same thing where all I wanted to do was strum this song and sing it at the same time. I had the lyrics memorized, but when I sat down to sort of strum it, either my lyrics would go off the rails or my strumming would go off the rails. I could not get the two to combine. But I did get over the hump. It took time, and it sort of took me sort of zigzagging my way through the wilderness of learning. But I worked it out. I always remember that one song because it seemed impossible at the time. So what I want to do is answer Renee's question here. And again, this hopefully will apply to anyone else who has this question for any other song, or just in general. I think a lot of my answer will help you with learning different parts of guitar playing where you're combining stuff, and the challenge of how do I combine two things where once I combine them, one of them sort of gets messed up. Okay? So here's sort of my thoughts on the issue. First up is there's no simple answer I'm going to give you in the next 10 minutes that are going to magically solve this, right? Part of it's information. It's knowing what to do. It's how to approach it, how to practice it. But the other part is practice. So please, after this video, hopefully what I say is helpful and it will be somewhat of a guiding light to get there. But this is all based on my experience. But remember, practice is going to be a part of it no matter what. Okay? So with that said, I think the next part that's important is understanding the problem really that's going on here. And and by problem, I mean what are we trying to solve, right? And I think it's key to understand that there are lots of things when you're trying to sing and strum and play a song, there's lots of things that our brain is sort of trying to do, trying to remember, right? There's a strumming pattern, right? You mentioned the strumming pattern. There's the chord shapes with our left hand. There's the chord progressions. There's when do I switch from this chord to this chord, right? There is the lyrics. There's remembering them, but there's also singing them. So it's two different functions in your brain. You put all these together, that's a lot of different processes that your brain has to sort of muster, right? If you're cooking, that's a lot of different pots on the stove or whatever the metaphor you want to pick is. So what's happening is when your brain is trying to combine these, if any of these things are not grasped and understood and sort of able to be done unconsciously by the brain, what's going to happen is your brain's put in a position where it's asked to do too many things. I have to remember the lyrics and the chord shapes and give you the strumming pattern. It's one of those is going to sort of falter. One of those is going to give out. And that sounds like it's what's happening with your strumming pattern is as soon as you start singing, your strumming just goes off the rails. Okay. So that's the problem. And that's okay. I mean, that's something that's common for anyone sort of trying to do this at first. So I want to call that out. This is how we're going to solve that. So the first thing I would say is the importance of isolating and focusing. So I listed all those different components, those things that we're trying to remember when we're playing a song, right? When I say isolate and focus, I mean, let's make sure that we have those different pieces worked out and solved and figured out. So if you're trying to sing and strum and learn the chords and everything, make sure you know the chords, you know how to play them, you have the progression down. Work that out, make sure it's good. And this is going to be a personal thing you'll have to work out. Different songs for each of you, you're going to know different parts well. If you're playing in a new key, the chords might be different, but you might know the lyrics totally, right? Other times you might know the strumming, but it's something else that's going to be the weak link. So it's identify what is the weakest link of all these for you. Now, if it's a strumming, that's great. You can focus on that. And there are ways to focus on it. And specifically what I recommend doing is if you're trying to learn this song, Feathered Indians, for example, or any other song, put the song on in the background, okay? Take your strumming pick. Don't worry about chords with your left hand. Don't even worry about singing with your throat, with your mouth. Basically, just worry about the strumming. Let the song play a few times, and basically, as it's going, strum along with it, right? Exactly in time with the song. And try to get through the entire song like this. And it might seem boring and mundane and at first, I got this, I don't need to do it. But I'm telling you, This is something I do all the time when I'm practicing a song, right? And at first it's kind of hard. Like my hand gets tired after a minute, or this happens or that happens, or the chorus uses a different strumming. But the goal is to be able to do this. And if you can do it, say if you did it once or twice a day for a few days in a row, this is going to teach your hand like, hey, I need to get good at this. You know, it's sort of like developing that muscle memory. And the reason I'm sort of strumming while I'm talking right now is this is an example of a good goal, which is to be able to do this, the strumming, unconsciously. Like I'm telling my hand, like, hey, strum in this pattern, repeat, just go. And I'm talking over it. And if you can get to a point where you can hold a conversation while you're strumming, that's a good sign. It means that your like strumming muscles are developed and they're good to go. Now, I will say that the way it works with strumming patterns is often I have like a bank of strum patterns in my head, right? Lots of times when I learn a new strum pattern, all this starts over. I have to go back to square one, what I'm teaching you right now. And it's really tricky. So don't at all feel like this is an uncommon thing. Like you totally can get over this, okay? The next thing I would say is simplifying is another approach you can use, okay? And by simplifying, I mean, you could maybe, instead of singing the words, you could just hum them, hum the melody, right? That rids your brain of having to remember the words and your throat of having to say the words, and you could just hum. That's a lot easier, right? Simplifying the strum also could be possible, where instead of doing this, you could do this, right? Just down strums, for example. Or something similar, where you're basically taking the strum and you're just cutting it in half, or you're cutting out a lot of the complexity, or this, right? Cutting it in half again. And that way you can work on the singing, you work on the chords, you can work on everything else, but you're simplifying the part that's really challenging for you. And then that sort of lets you build confidence with it and lets you sort of make sure all the other pieces are where they need to be. And then slowly you can build the strum back up, okay? The next piece I would have is slow it down. And this might seem obvious, but it's really important to make sure when you're practicing something new that you're not making mistakes, right? You don't want to speed up if you're making mistakes and sort of like think that you're going to get to competence faster. You want to slow it down and do it at a speed where you can get through it without making any mistakes, right? And only then when you're kind of comfortable, and I'm actually going too slow, I'm messing up, but right, take it slow it down, get it to a point where you can do it without making any mistakes, and then only then speed it up, right? And then the final thing I'll share with you isn't really a tip, but it's more of a way to think about this, right? I once heard somebody describe this sort of linear progression of how we learn things, right? So we start off in this realm of unconscious incompetence, right? I mean, we incompetent, we can't do it, but we don't even know we can't do it, right? That's like me if you gave me a violin or a flute or an oboe. I've never played any of those things before. There's all kinds of stuff I don't know that I don't know. Like I don't know what I don't know. I'm sure that's just what it is. Like I don't know it. But then the next realm after that is conscious incompetence, where basically we know that we don't know something or we're not capable of doing something. So for me, it's like playing, this chord with a hard bass note or doing whatever. It's like I'm aware of this challenge, I just can't do it, okay? And that's okay, like you work through that. The next part is to get to a realm of conscious competence, where that means like you can do something and you know you can do it, right? So if I give you this chord sheet and it says play G, C, D for 4 measures each, you know those chords, you know how to strum, you can do it, right? So you're aware that you can do it. But then the next and the final realm is that of unconscious competence. And this means like you don't even know that you know it. Like you're doing it unconsciously without even thinking. So a couple like places this could apply. For me as a teacher, for example, I'm always very wary of this. Like there might be things that I can do on guitar that I've forgotten that I can do, and I do them without thinking about it. And that's really dangerous from a teacher's point of view, because it's important for me as a teacher to remember what it's like to be a student and to struggle with certain things, right? If I just take for granted certain skills that I've picked up and I don't even think about anymore, that could be bad in my case as a teacher. But for you as a player, and for me as a player too, this is a good side of this is when it comes to things like that strumming pattern, right? Where I can do this and not think about it. I'm unconsciously competent because I'm thinking about something else totally while I'm doing this, right? So this is sort of the goal to get to. One thing I like to do when I'm sort of dealing with problems like this and challenges of learning songs is I put on a TV show, or when sports are on, for example, and it's teams I care about or whatever, I'll enjoy watching it because I can zone out and like pay attention to the game, and I'll just play a riff or a strumming pattern over and over again. I'm not even thinking about playing it because I'm focused. I want my team to score, or I want this to happen or that to happen. So that's like one little thing that works for me on the occasion I do watch sports. But I would say it's like find those times where you can practice, where you almost can like let your mind hang back a little bit, and you can sort of put that skill you're developing into that unconscious, toward that realm of unconscious competence or whatever. So Renee, I hope these helped you. I hope these thoughts coming from me were of assistance. Remember, it takes time, but you can get through it. Just spend time with it. Practice. It's not something you're going to master overnight, but you spend time with it, it will work itself out, I'm sure, right? And remember, every new strumming pattern or new chord progression or whatever can feel like we're going backwards sometimes, and that's okay. But just use the same principles of how to learn something, isolate the variables, and you, I think, can get over that hump, right? So again, I offer all this with a grain of salt. It's coming from my experience, and toward that end, I hope it is helpful. But Renee, let me know how this goes for you. I hope this video was of service to you, and I hope you can get over that hump and sing and strum this song at the same time, because music can be so much fun, and I really hope you can get there with it. So thanks very much for watching, y'all. If you have any more questions, let me know. That would be something I would be love to do, is answer one of these each time I do a recording session. So thanks very much, y'all. Take care, pick up your guitar, play, and practice. Bye-bye.